Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and seen nothing? Not anger, not sadness, but an abyss, a perfect, polished void, so artfully concealed that, for a terrifying moment, you begin to doubt your own perception. You wonder if you are losing your mind. There are maps for the darkest corners of the earth. But what about a map for the darkness inside the human soul? A century ago, the psychologist Carl Jung, a man who was less a clinician and more an explorer of the human spirit, gave us such a map. He warned us. He warned that the greatest danger to our well-being doesn't come from a roar, but from a whisper, from silent signals, subtle, almost invisible cracks in a person's carefully constructed mask. But this is not a guide for judging others. Consider it a mirror, because to recognize the abyss in another, you must first have the courage to acknowledge that it exists in some form within us all. And the first, most common form this inner darkness takes is the shadow. That is the name Jung gave it. The shadow is every part of ourselves we find unacceptable. Our rage, our envy, our greed, our shame, everything that society, our family, and we ourselves have deemed bad or unworthy. We don't destroy these parts. We can't. Instead, we banish them to the cellar of our unconscious mind. But that which is banished never lies still. It seeks escape. And the easiest way for it to escape without forcing us to confront the truth of its ownership is projection. The mechanism is both brutally simple and an act of unconscious self-defense. The mind says, this guilt, this insecurity, this ugliness, it is too much to bear. I cannot be this person. And so, like a projector, it casts those qualities onto the nearest screen, which is you. Understand this. They don't hate you. They are hating the part of themselves they have rejected. And they are using you as the canvas to paint that monster, so they can fight it out in the world, instead of confronting it within their own soul. To understand its terrible power, look to myth. Look to Medusa. Before she was a monster with serpents for hair who could turn any man to stone, Medusa was a beautiful priestess. Her beauty was violated, transformed into a horror so absolute she could not even look at her own reflection. This is the perfect symbol of a banished shadow, a once beautiful quality turned monstrous through trauma and repression. When a person projects onto you, they are not merely criticizing you. They are forcing you to look at their Medusa. They are accusing you of the very horror they cannot bear to face in themselves. So, how do you know? How do you recognize that you are standing in the shadow of a projection? Listen for the absurdity. Listen for the disproportion. When their accusation against you has absolutely no footing in reality. When you know in your core that it is not true, yet they state it with a fanatical certainty. More importantly, feel the emotional intensity. When their reaction is a tidal wave, and your action was a mere ripple in a pond. When their rage is so profoundly out of scale with the alleged mistake, you are no longer in a conversation. You are in a psychodrama, and you have been cast as the villain. And in that psychodrama, there is always a director, a figure of absolute, unshakable certainty. This brings us to the second silent signal, one even more subtle than projection: ego inflation. Do not mistake this for arrogance or high self-esteem. Arrogance is still human. It is aware of others, of rules. Ego inflation is something else entirely. It is the dissolution of the boundary between the human and the divine. Their ego, their small I, no longer exists. It has been inflated, merging with an archetype, often that of the savior, the sage, or the truth-bearer. They no longer believe they have the right idea. They believe they are the embodiment of truth itself. Their life is no longer a personal journey. It has become a holy war. And in that holy war, if you are not with them, you are against them. Anyone who doubts them is an enemy of truth itself. In literature, there is no clearer, more tragic example than Captain Ahab in Moby Dick. Ahab is not merely a whaling captain. He is the high priest of vengeance. The white whale, Moby Dick, is not an animal to him. It is the physical incarnation of all cosmic malice. His obsession inflates his ego beyond the bounds of his own humanity. He is no longer a captain responsible for his crew. He has become a tyrant of vengeance, his own minor god, willing to drag everyone to the bottom of the sea to satisfy his cosmic rage. That is ego inflation in its most terrifying form. So, what is the telltale sign in the real world? Forget logical debate. The sign is in their reaction to criticism. When you question them, even with the best intentions, they do not hear a question. They hear an attack on the cosmic order. When you offer a different perspective, they do not see a point of view. They see blasphemy. Look into their eyes in that moment. You will not see a person looking back. You will see a burning certainty, a terrifying light, the light of a God who tolerates no unbelievers. But not all dangers announce themselves with a burning light. Some are far getter. They are cloaked in virtue, in politeness, in perfection. This leads us to our third signal, perhaps the most unsettling of all. The total identification with the persona. The persona, in Latin, was the mask worn by actors in Greek theater. Jung used this term to describe the social face we present to the world. The devoted mother, the wise doctor, the rebellious artist. We all wear a mask. Having a persona is not dangerous. It is necessary for social functioning. The danger begins when the actor forgets they are wearing a mask, when the role becomes more real than the person. Be wary of perfection. The person who is too good, too correct, too agreeable, the one who never has a hair out of place, never a word misspoken. Their mask has become their face. And behind that perfection lies not strength, but a void, a forgotten self, an abandoned soul. In Zen Buddhism, there is a famous koan. Show me your original face, the face you had before your parents were born. This original face is the authentic, unconditioned self, unshaped by the expectations of the world. It is your essence. The person who is totally identified with their persona has permanently lost this face. All they have left is the socially approved mask. They are a performance, not a person. They are a program running flawlessly, but inside, nobody is home. And how do you detect this? Don't look for flaws. You won't find them. Instead, pay attention to how you feel in their presence. The conversation is pleasant. The smiles are in place. Everything is correct. Yet when you leave, you feel drained. An inexplicable exhaustion. That is because your unconscious, your soul, has been desperately trying to connect the entire time. It is searching for the real person behind the performance. Your soul is searching for a hand to shake, and all it finds is a perfectly crafted mannequin. That exhaustion you feel is the echo of their emptiness. But nature and the psyche abhors a vacuum. And when the individual self is abandoned, that empty space does not remain empty for long. Something else rushes in to fill it. This is how we arrive at the fourth signal, a state of true psychic peril. Archetypal possession. Archetypes are primordial energy structures in the collective unconscious of humanity. The hero, the martyr, the tyrant, the sage, they are ancient psychic riverbeds that our energy can flow into. Normally, A healthy ego can borrow energy from these archetypes. But when the ego is too weak or has been erased by identification with the persona, a terrible inversion occurs. The person no longer uses the archetype's energy. The archetype uses the person as its vessel, as its puppet. Suddenly, the person you are talking to is no longer there. At times, it is not a person talking to you at all. It is something older, more impersonal. They are no longer an individual. They are a walking symbol, and symbols are incredibly dangerous. Think of the most charismatic cult leaders. Where does their power come from? It's not just in their words. It's in the current they are channeling. When they speak, they don't speak as I. They speak as the savior, the revolutionary, the enlightened one. The energy they radiate is magnetic, almost irresistible, because it taps into the oldest longings for salvation and meaning within all of us. You are not drawn to the person. You are drawn to the archetype speaking through them. It is a form of psychic contagion. So how do you see it? By the absolute lack of flexibility. Try to talk to the savior about their bills. Try to discuss the weather with the martyr. You can't. The channel has only one frequency. They are locked into a single role, incapable of self-mockery, devoid of human complexity. And watch their eyes. It is always the eyes, not the emptiness of the persona, not the burning light of the inflated ego. This is something else. A strange light, an inhuman certainty. It is like looking into the eyes of an ancient statue that has suddenly begun to speak. You feel the presence of something immensely old and utterly indifferent to you as an individual. And while that ancient, indifferent energy is terrifying, there is a final signal that is not cosmic, but deeply, tragically human. It is a pattern written not in the stars, but in scar tissue. This is the fifth and final sign, the repetition compulsion. If the prior signals are about what a person projects outward, this one is about the prison they build for themselves and then unwittingly invite others into. This is the most tragic signal because the person is often completely unaware. They are trapped in a play they don't know they wrote. They are constantly, obsessively recreating the same trauma, the same tragedy, with different actors in different settings. A cold father from the past is recast as a critical boss. An abandoning mother is recast as an unavailable partner. And you are being invited to audition for a part. Freud called it the return of the repressed. More poetically, think of the myth of Sisyphus, the king cursed by the gods to an eternity of meaningless labor, pushing a boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll down the moment it nears the top. That boulder is their unresolved trauma. Each new relationship, each new job, each new friendship is a new attempt to push the boulder up the hill. They push with all their might, genuinely believing this time will be different. But the internal script, the gravity of the wound, has already determined the outcome. The boulder will always roll back down, and they will always be at the bottom of the hill, genuinely surprised and heartbroken, wondering why this keeps happening to them. So, how do you see it? By becoming a historian. Listen to the stories of their past. How did their relationships end? Why did they leave their jobs? Does the narrative sound familiar? Is it always the crazy ex, the backstabbing friend, the unfair boss? If the pattern is clear to you, but completely invisible to them, if they are always the passive victim in the same recurring script, step back. That play doesn't need another actor. So, we have learned to step back. We have identified the signals. But this knowledge is useless if it only serves to build walls. Its true purpose is to open a door that leads inward. So, what is it? What is the fundamental difference between a person lost in these dangerous patterns and one who is on the path to wholeness? What is the core distinction? A single word: integration. Integration is the courage to stop running. It is the ability to turn, to look at one's own shadow, one's own rage, pettiness, and fear, and to say, I see you. You are a part of me too. The dangerous person insists on their own innocence. The healing person accepts their own complexity. As Carl Jung famously said, I would rather be whole than good. Good is often a rigid persona, a fragile perfection. But whole is resilient. It includes the light and the dark. True safety comes not from the denial of darkness, but from its understanding and embrace. And you recognize such a person by a very different set of signs. They have a deep compassion for others because they are intimately aware of their own struggles. They have a sense of humor about their own flaws. They don't need to be right. They only need to be real. The journey into the soul is the most important one a human being can take. It is not for the faint of heart. But if you are ready, start by looking in the mirror. Share in the comments. Have you ever recognized any of these signals? In others? Or perhaps in yourself? Acknowledgement is the first step towards transformation. If you wish to continue this exploration, join us, subscribe,